Hello, everyone. Welcome to NFA Live. We are back. It is Thursday. Rob, Ben, myself are united. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. People are joining us on YouTube and via X, or Twitter, as it used to be called as well. We finally caught up with that too. So, Rob, Ben, it's great to see you guys. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, all right, thanks. All right, it's been an interesting week. We're still kind of waiting for that next leg higher. Things have been a little sort of choppy sideways for Bitcoin and Ethereum at any rate. Alts have had a bit of a tough week, but we're going to dig into all that. There's a fair bit I want to ask you guys about today. Including stuff about Ethereum, including stuff about just the kind of market in general, because this was supposed to be the summer lull. I want to also ask you about treasury companies and if that's the next big blow up, and lots more besides. But I just want to start off. Before we go, though, if people have any questions for Rob, Ben, or myself, please do drop them in the comments, and we will endeavour to answer a few of them later on. And don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're not already following Ben and Rob, then links are in the description. And well, I heartily recommend that you do follow them. If you're not, you are missing out. So let's start off. Yesterday was FOMC, Jerome Powell back in the spotlight. I'd love to just get your guys' takes on that very quickly before we sort of dive into the main bit of the stream. So, Ben, can I just get your thoughts on, did you take anything away from what Powell said? What was the sort of forward guidance that you got from him, if any?
Well, I mean, I think it's very clear that he's pushing back against the administration, right? I mean, because Trump came out yesterday. I think you actually tweeted about this on Coin Bureau as well. But Trump was basically coming out and saying that the Fed's going to cut in September, and then when Powell was directly asked about that, he said they've made no decision about September. And now we've gone from basically the market's pricing in that rate cut to now the market's actually leaning in the direction of no rate cut in September. And I mean, we just saw Meta and what was it, Microsoft earnings yesterday, and they completely blew out the estimates. We just got real GDP, I think, revisions, right? Or we just got real GDP for Q2, and it was like 3%. So I guess the argument is, well, if the economy is doing fine, right? If all these companies are still doing incredibly well, we got layoff report just a few days ago. Layoffs are still relatively low. Initial claims are still relatively low, and you still have this. Hey, the Fed and Powell, they're worried that tariffs might cause like a one-time inflationary spike. It's not that surprising that the Fed didn't cut rates, right? I mean, how can they justify it if you're seeing unemployment rate trend down and you're seeing the inflation rate trend up, which is what's happened over the last few months? So I don't really think any of it's that surprising. I understand that a lot of people would prefer rate cuts. And a lot of people sort of, I think, falsely assume that rate cuts will lead to lower mortgage rates. But as we learned in September of 2024, that's not necessarily true, right? If they cut too soon, it can actually send the long end of the yield curve higher. So we did get 2 dissents, though. So two of the people on the committee actually dissented and said that they wanted to cut rates. I almost wonder if that's sort of a bid for them to try to become the next Fed chair. Just to kind of put it out there that they're more dovish and they are more in agreement with the president that they should in fact be cutting rates. But we'll see. We're going to get the next Fed meeting is not until September. It's about 6 weeks from now, and we're going to get 2 job reports between now and then, and we're going to get 2 more inflation readings between now and then. So there's going to be a lot more data to come between now and September. And I think that if inflation trends higher between now and then, you still might not get a rate cut, right? I mean, let's say like if inflation goes up, say like 3 or let's say 30 basis points or something. Yeah, I mean maybe they don't. But if inflation goes down and the unemployment rate goes up, then they absolutely should cut in September. So we'll see what the data comes in at. I think Powell did what was expected. I think the markets the markets are pretty good at knowing what the Fed's going to do a few days in advance. So I think it made absolutely no sense to assume they were going to cut rates. They also continued quantitative tightening. There wasn't really as much discussion about that. But yeah, QT continues. And so I'm not really thinking. And the weird thing about that, though, is that I don't know if you guys remember this, but at the very beginning of 2025, there was like a release. I think it was one of like the summary of economic projections, I want to say, for the Fed, where they kind of forecast that QT might end about mid 2025. But we're now through July, and the next meeting's not till September. So I guess they've raised that forecast to be later, right? And I mean, who can blame them? So yeah, I mean, I don't really think anything is surprising. I think the markets right now, as it relates to Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think they're more or less just kind of consolidating in preparation for the jobs report tomorrow, and then the markets might start moving again.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, thanks, Ben. As you can see up on the screen there, we posted the PCE, which is obviously the rate that the Fed watches closest. That has shown a slight uptick, not huge, but it does suggest that inflation, is still sort of bubbling away, which could give pause at some point. But Ben, that was an interesting point you made as well about the dissents too, because two members of the board dissented. I mean, it's a fairly big board, so you could argue that only 2 dissenters perhaps sends a message to Trump that, like, maybe he could get rid of Powell and put his own person in, but it does sort of suggest that the rest of the vast majority of the Fed board is behind Powell and what he's doing. So, maybe that sends a message to Trump that actually just replacing Powell, even if that were, easy to do, might not be enough to get him what he wants. Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I also, I really do. I guess I just assume that. I don't know. I didn't actually look at his account yesterday, but I don't think, unless he said something since I went to sleep last night, I didn't even see Trump say anything about. He did. When did he say it?
An hour ago.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't looked today. So what did he say, Rob?
He said, and depending on if you like Trump or hate Trump, it's going to be a distinction. He says, Jerome, too late. Powell has done it again. He is too late and too angry, too stupid and too political to have the job of Fed chair. He is costing our country trillions of dollars. In addition to one of the most incompetent or corrupt renovations of a building in the history of construction, put another way, too late is a total loser, and our country is paying the price. So hopefully that clip won't be cut out and plastered everywhere. But that's what Donald Trump said on Truth Social roughly at 5 a.m.
5 a.m. That's pretty much the first thing he's doing. That guy, he's interesting priorities for the morning.
I think people should know, generally speaking, that the Fed raises rates in strong economies and cuts rates in weak economies, right? So, again, if it's a strong economy, what's the justification, for cutting? If it's a weak economy, then why do we keep saying it's a strong one?
Yeah. It's a good point. Did you, speaking of this renovation thing that tweet mentioned, did you guys see that video of Powell and Trump being sort of looking around this building?
Everybody saw that.
That's going to be a meme forever now, Like, I mean, think about how much use that's going to get.
Yeah. I thought Powell actually came out of that really well. It was some really good sort of Buster Keaton dumb show stuff, wasn't it? With the glasses and the sort of facial expressions. It was like this guy's got a, he's so deadpan. It was brilliant.
It almost felt like a script, honestly.
Yeah. Someone putting Laurel and Hardy. I think there was an element of that. Yeah, it was. I thought it was AI when I first saw it. I was like, there's no way this.
I did too, actually. I was like, there's no way this is real.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah, they did do an AI version of that with the babies, and it was 10 times better than the original.
It's so strange. It's so strange. Okay, let's move on from the Fed then. I want to ask you guys, because I think recently, before we went on our sort of NFA summer break, which was about 3 weeks, I think we were off air. Certainly off air doing these lives. But the market has not really slowed down. We thought a lot of us were expecting a sort of summer lull in the markets. And that just doesn't seem to have happened. You know, Bitcoin has been holding up. It posted a new all-time high not that long ago. Ethereum is now outperforming Bitcoin and the rest of the market. Stocks, the S&Ps are still at all-time highs. So my question is, why haven't we seen a lull? Or is this actually a lull? And come September, things are going to go absolutely bananas. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Rob, can I start with you on this one?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that because of the tariff, well, it all comes down to, is the Fed going to cut rates? And because of the tariffs, that they all start to, well, not all. August 1st was supposed to be the kickoff day. And then once that happens, it's up to Jerome Powell to say, okay, we're going to cut, we're not going to cut. And just like Ben said, in September, we've already seen that the odds went from 54% to over 62% now for them saying that they're going to keep the rates. And what they're going to say is, look, we don't know if this is going to be a one-time thing or it's going to continue to go up. So we're not going to cut rates. And you can't just do that for like 6 weeks. Just take a look at tariffs because it's going to take time. So they're going to take, I think, the whole summer to really take a look at this. And then there's going to be a rate cut. And just take a look at the markets yesterday. We all knew there was going to be no cuts. Everybody knew that. Yet what happened? The market it sunk. And then like Ben talked about, I mean, you have Microsoft and Meta came out and they blew out expectations. And what happened with the S&P 500? It actually went down. It actually hit a high last week. And just today, because of that small little instance, now all of a sudden, now they're freaking out. So when I take a look at this, I just say, well, I don't think it's going to be the same thing in the summer. Like we have this summer, not like a rocket ship like everybody was expecting. Usually, if you take a look at just seasonality, you can see that August and September are historically really not the greatest months, especially September across the board for digital assets and traditional markets. September is the crappiest month that we can have. What happens in October and November? November, historically speaking, if you take a look from 2010 moving forward, November is the best month moving forward. So October, November, I can see it, and that would be in line with these 4-year cycles if those are in play, unless you believe Charles Hoskinson, where he says it's not. And we'll see. So me personally, I'm kind of hoping that things go down because that would be a great time to accumulate. And then we get into the next months, which October, November. So we'll see.
You're clearly a veteran of this industry, Rob. Hoping for it to go down more because I think you need a lot of mental strength to deal with that.
Well, let me just say this. Like I know, like people say, like altcoin season. I don't know if that's even going to come back. I think it's selective, and it's selective on the ones that actually have momentum and they have utility. And I've said much, and I actually took a cue from you, Guy, when you talked about payments. I said, well, if it's going to be payments, and we had the Genius Act just come through, then what are the two biggest stable coins? It's USDC and Tether, and that's 93% of the market. And which are the top 3 or 4 different chains that are on there? Well, it's Ethereum, it's BNB, it's Solana, and it's Tron. So when I take a look at that, and I'd be selective moving forward, and of course, one of my other favorites, SWI, things could do pretty well. But one thing that does concern me though, and it's something that you and Nick brought up in your latest live stream, which was you talked about the Warren Buffett indicator. It's the Wilshire 5,000 to GDP ratio, Warren Buffett indicator, and it is at an all-time high. And when you take a look at that, you can just tell that things are massively overheated, especially in the traditional markets. Does that carry over to ours? Obviously it does. So when I take a look at that, and it's even higher than 2021 when things were just insane. I mean, there's potential for some negativity. So everybody, hopefully they're careful out there and they do their research.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, are you with Rob on this one? I mean, do you think kind of actually this is a bit of a summer lull, and it's we're going to really pick up towards the end of the year, or what are your thoughts?
If you can share my screen.
Hang on. Let me.
Yeah. So in the summer, we talked about this a few months ago too. Is that like in post halving years, it's not always as obvious. Like if you look at 2025, July was green, and if you look at 2021, July was green, and if you look at 2017, July was green, and if you look at 2013, July was green, and if you look at all those years, August was also green, right? In 2013, August was green. 2017, August was green. 2021, August was green as well. It was that September was red. Right. So 2021, we saw September slightly red. 2017, September was red. And 2013, September was red. So maybe that's the path that the market's going to take, right? Where you get sort of maybe you could call it like a late summer lull. But that lull, if you still consider September part of the summer, which most of it technically is, could actually be a drop, potentially to a higher price than we are right now, right? If we actually go up in August. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times you'll start to see weakness in the market in post-tech, around like late August, September timeframe. So I could see something like that happening, right? There's a scenario where like Ethereum breaks up to the prior highs, potentially as early as August, and then maybe gets a pullback back down to 4K by like say September, and then it gets a run into whatever its market cycle top is going to be after that. I could see that playing out, but if you look at this chart, if you look at this table, I guess it shows you that a lot of the post halving years can play out a little bit differently than the halving year or the pre-halving year, where you get these longer drawn out summer lulls. So yeah, and I think the other thing too is that we also this year we had a really big drop in Q1 and early Q2, and it almost seems like we're just kind of riding off that momentum, right? That summer lull almost seems to have been replaced, put it in April instead of summer, right? It's like we got it, it's just we got it earlier in the year is kind of what it seems like it's happening.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean that potentially bodes well for the end of the year. And I'm sure everyone would be happy about that. It's I guess so many people now, I think a lot of the sentiment out there is just, there's kind of a there's a lot of impatience there, I think, for us to rip higher. But these things take time to gather strength, I think. So yeah, it's cheering to know that actually, we could just be getting started in terms of what's coming this year. Because I mean, it feels like we're, now that we're, as you pointed out, Ben, we're now through July. The year feels like it's sort of really accelerating towards the end. But actually, we've still got almost half a year to go. So there's a lot can happen in that time.
Yeah, and guess what? All Bitcoin pairs still need to go to the range lows. What better time for them to do that than September, October?
Well, we're going to talk about that in a bit, because I want to talk about what's been happening with Ethereum and ETH pairs as well. But we'll get to there. First, I want to ask you guys. So, the consensus view seems to be that the next big crypto bust, the next big meltdown, will probably come from one of these treasury companies that are just all over the news at the moment, all over the crypto news. First they were stacking BTC, now they're stacking ETH, and I mean we've even got some stacking sort of select altcoins, and it looks like this narrative, this meta is going to keep playing out, for a while at any rate. But I mean, already people are saying like this is not going to end well. All it takes is for one of these dominoes to fall over, and the whole stack is going to come crashing down. So I was thinking about this, and I sort of thought, well, that's what everyone is expecting. That's the consensus view, it seems. So that means it must be wrong, because it never is. It's never what we think it is. But I mean, do you guys? What do you guys feel? Do you think this is the most likely cause of the next thing to sort of blow us up, or do you think it might come from somewhere else? What are we not talking about in terms of potential catastrophes? I don't want to sound too doomer when we've just been talking about hopefully things going up towards the end of the year. But anyone who's been in crypto for any length of time will know that you've got to be prepared. You've got to be armed for the future. So, Rob, can I start with you on this?
Sure. I remember when I got in 2017, a lot of the OGs would say, not your keys, not your crypto, and they would say, take it off exchanges. And I was like, whatever. You guys have been around too long. You have PTSD. Sucks for you. And then, of course, as we get into 2020, 2021, we saw, 2022, the FTX, the Celsius, the Voyager, and the BlockFis. So it actually did play out pretty much what they said. So with this one, if we take a look at the treasuries, potentially, that could be a part of it. I don't think it's going to be the Bitcoin treasuries per se. If you take a look at MicroStrategy, they have the lion's share. I think Bitcoin itself is pretty safe, but I think it's all the other, and this could be a bigger play for altcoins. As you put on Ethereum onto your balance sheet and Solana and whatever else that's out there that you're putting on balance sheet, that could be a bigger play because they're more volatile and they don't have the large market cap that is. But there's another thing that I think could be a big thing. Do me a favor. Let me share my screen real quick on this one. Mm-hmm. I want you to actually have to be a tab. Okay. Let me play this video. See this from TradingView. It's pretty interesting. This is a minute. It's 6 minutes long, but just listen to this.
I'm a personal analyst available to you.
I already did it. What it was, wish I could have shown that, but there's a ton of them. What that was a guy talking about TradingView, looked legit, right? And he talks about all you got to do is just download TradingView, and we actually have a partnership with ChatGPT. And all you got to do is download TradingView. It takes you to TradingView. You download that app, and then just put in this line of code in your TradingView app. And guess what it is? It's a Trojan horse. And that channel had 104,000 subscribers, and it already had I don't know how many 100,000 views. So you take a look at those types of scams and things like that. Like people say, well, that's just individuals. Yeah, but what could happen for, let's say, and I've always said this, Coinbase Prime. Well, Coinbase already had a small little hack when it was their customer service support. Somebody paid off customer service support to get, I think it was what Coinbase said was 4.1% of their user base to give their personal information, their address, and your social security number, at least the last four, your bank account number, the last 4 to 6, and then also how much you actually have on the platform. So that's why people were getting these emails saying, hey, I know you have whatever millions of dollars, and I know where you live, so let's do this. My question is, if it already happened with Coinbase, and we have the majority at Coinbase Prime, which is for the BlackRocks and all, for different custody services, that's a sweet honeypot if they can get away with it. So if that happens, and people would say, well, that's not going to happen. Sure, it didn't happen before. So if that happens, then everything crumbles. And then also, we just talked about stable coins, and it's a good play, I think. As far as the chains, but also remember that USDC and Tether have both frozen transactions, and they can do that. So what does that mean? That means, well, if the US government backs these stable coins, especially USDC and Jeremy Allaire and Tether, that means that they can have control. It's not the chains that they can control, but they definitely can control USDC and Tether. So what happens if they actually freeze that? Well, that's a big problem for the chains that it's built on. So I see those two instances potentially happening, and also hacks along the way, but a bigger hack. We'll see.
Yeah. It's and it's interesting what you say about the stable coins, Rob, because yes, not only does there, can the issuers be leaned on to freeze funds, but someone made a good point recently. I forget who it was. That said, okay, these things are backed by US treasuries, and that's great. The safest form of backing, the safest form of collateral there is. But the bigger and bigger these things get, if there is a downturn, or if there is, any call for redemptions, you've got to wonder what the US government is going to feel about suddenly this massive sell-off in treasuries in order to redeem all these stable coins that they're backing. And, you know, the question becomes like, is that something that the US government would just be like, oh, well, you know, you guys have got to sell them. and obviously if, you know, if they do sort of put limits, if they do push back on that, then obviously those stable coins can't be redeemed, and that will cause them to depeg, and that could cause all sorts of problems. So yeah, I think definitely stablecoins are a huge sort of, you know, they're the big growth sector at the moment, aren't they? You know, there's so much potential there. But I guess the more embedded they become, the more dangerous they, you know, the bigger the threat they potentially pose.
I can definitely see it. We'll see if it plays out. Maybe it's just a big nothing burger and me just being a little bit too protective.
Too battle scarred from previous cycles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember a while ago, Jess, when she was with us, she did an interview with Raoul Powell and Arthur Hayes on Coin Bureau. And Arthur's view was, his take was that the next bear market, or the next, you know, big catastrophe, would be caused by the hack or some sort of failure with a centralized custodian. Kind of like what you alluded to, Rob. And I think, you know, Coinbase custody is, I think Coinbase is the custodian for, is it sort of 11 of these ETFs or something? 11 out of 13 ETFs?
Yeah, it's a big one. It's also MicroStrategy. So if that gets hacked, goodbye everything.
Yeah.
Not everything. I mean, I think it'll last. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it'll last. It's just going to be a big hit, just like what happened with the last cycle.
Yeah. Ben, what about you? Is there anything that you're sort of concerned about could be the next sort of blow up, or do you feel it's more likely to come from one of these treasury companies? And, you know, and if so, and if it does come from a treasury company, what folding, what could be the spark that sort of triggers that company to fail, or, you know, that sort of triggers the downturn in prices that then causes more selling?
Yeah, I think that's the point, is that like the narrative follows the price usually. So it'd be like, you know, price goes down, which causes those companies to struggle, right? And it could be that like the companies that are doing the Bitcoin treasuries are fine. Maybe the ones that do Ethereum treasuries are fine. But what if in 6 months we get 1,000 different companies, or a lot of companies piling in on altcoin treasury ideas, you know, or something like that? That could be a negative thing. But, you know, I don't want to just repeat everything that Rob said. I think everything he said is completely valid. I'll just add one other thing to it, and this might be the reason why we start to, you know, let's call it in about like 6 months or something, because normally the bear markets are in the midterm years. So if you go look here, let me share my screen. We've been kind of talking about this for a while. This is the S&P 500 divided by the money supply. And it's kind of still following what it did once upon a time, you know, way back over here, where it gets this like huge 20% drop, and then it just recovers to all-time highs almost immediately. But what's more interesting about it is what the Fed was doing at the time, right? So if you look at, actually, I think I already have it up here. If you look at interest rates, you'll notice that the Fed cut interest rates right around that 20% drop. Same thing happened over here, right? You see the Fed cut those rates around that same time, that 20% drop or so. But what's really interesting is the fact that they ended up raising rates again after that. And I don't really think that raising rates is on anyone's bingo card right now, because it seems to be more so like the rhetoric is, when are we going to cut rates, not when are we going to raise rates. And, you know, if you made me say, like, I would struggle to assume that the next move would be a rate hike. But I could see a scenario where they just don't cut nearly as aggressively, because tariffs lead to sort of kind of an echo wave of inflation, right? Where you get a move back up with inflation, and people kind of realize, wait, if inflation's back at like, you know, 3-4% or even higher, how can the Fed cut? And that could be kind of the narrative that ends up playing out, let's call it, you know, 6 months from now, right? And I think it's going to take a while for a lot of that tariff stuff, for the tariffs to really show up in the inflation data. It's not like an immediate thing. And also, furthermore, because a lot of the, negotiations on tariffs keep getting extended and paused and whatnot, it just kind of keeps delaying when all that stuff really might start to kick in, right? Until we actually know what the tariffs are going to be and what countries are going to be on, it kind of keeps delaying it. So I could see a scenario where the markets keep thinking we're going to have tons and tons of rate cuts, but then the Fed kind of has their hands tied because inflation's going back up. And again, I'm not saying it's going back up to 9%, but if it's just going in the wrong direction, even if it's back to say 4% or something, if it's going in the wrong direction, it might make it so that the Fed can't cut. Or in a worst case scenario, and I would say it's not my base case right now, but in a worst case scenario, it might make them raise rates again. Like imagine a scenario where, look at the strength of Ethereum recently after it went to the regression bit, right? Look at the strength of that. Imagine a scenario where all the animal spirits come back to life. Imagine a scenario where later this year you do get an alt season, right? And the sort of the constantly called for alt season actually happens. And if that stuff sort of rises to the top, if the animal spirits get ignited again, that could lead to inflation, right? Because if everyone's getting wealthier, then if people have more money, if they feel richer, they're more likely to spend, and that's essentially what happened back over here, right? There was a 20% drop. The Fed cut a little bit, the animal spirits got reignited, and then the Fed finally did what they needed to do to tame the animal spirits. So I could see all that playing out, but again, it's going to take some time, and even in this process, you could say that it's still, it still could be. With the stock market anyways, that whole process could still be 12 months into the future, right? Like it might not be something that starts right away. It could be something that happens not until, say, the middle of 2026.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, certainly rate hikes that would catch a lot of people by surprise, wouldn't it? Because as you say, Ben, like everyone is talking about rate cuts. When are we going to get this? When are we going to get the next cut? And yeah, the idea that actually rates might have to go back up again at some point, I think that would really spook the markets. And I guess we have to hope in this industry that that we've had our alt season by the time that happens, because to give people the opportunity to take some profit.
Well, it could be that it's the alt season that causes the market to go the other way. It's like the misallocation of capital, right? If everyone starts loading up into alts, that's when Bitcoin's like, all right, it's time for a bear market.
That's enough. That's quite enough. Things are getting out of control. It's the animal spirit. I kind of think the animal spirits will take over at some point.
They are. Already are. It feels like they're already taking. Look at Ethereum, right? We haven't. The market hasn't felt this much Ethereum euphoria in years. It kind of looks like we're already seeing it.
Yeah. The animal spirits are in town. It's gonna get spicy. Okay, I want to ask you guys a couple more questions, and then we'll sort of throw it to questions from the audience. Well, let's talk about that now, Ben. I was going to save this question till last, but I think it would be a good segue. So, you mentioned ETH. ETH is leading performer right now. And alts are currently bleeding to ETH. So the question is, when do we rotate? And if or when we do rotate, which alts do you think might be sort of first to catch a bid? You don't necessarily have to say specifically, but it might be specific sectors or what have you. But when might that rotation from ETH to alts begin?
Well, I think there's a lot of different rotations, right? Because like right now we're in the alt to ETH rotation, and I think we're gonna get another alt to Bitcoin rotation sometime in the next couple of months. It could start as late as a month from now, where alts rotate back to Bitcoin. So I would say that if you are making money on alts and they're doing really well, and you're starting to think. You're starting to think about all this alt season stuff again. I would argue that a lot of that might actually flow back into Bitcoin starting sometime in August. right? It doesn't have to be like August 1st. It could be the end of August. I don't know, but I'm going to say the rotation back to Bitcoin, my guess, will occur sometime in August. But I also think that ETH is going to go higher on its Bitcoin pair. Now, I feel like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you're like, well, how can Bitcoin dominance possibly go back up if ETH Bitcoin is also going up? But look at the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, Bitcoin dominance is up and ETH is also up against Bitcoin, right? So it is possible for that to happen, even though it sounds crazy, right? It is possible for it to happen. And the reason it's possible is because while Ethereum went quote unquote home, the altcoin market has not done the same thing on its Bitcoin pair. And so Bitcoin is the first to lead the bull market. And then at some point, after Ethereum goes home, it then leads the altcoin market. But that doesn't mean that the altcoin market is going to follow immediately, right? What I would guess is going to happen is you're probably going to see Ethereum go up to, to the prior all-time highs at some point within the next, call it 4 to 8 weeks, my guess. And then whenever I think it's going to get rejected on the first attempt to break through. And I think on that rejection, that might be where altcoins finally go to say like 0.25 on their Bitcoin pairs. Because look at what Ethereum did over the last few weeks. It skyrocketed. Altcoins still haven't really gone anywhere, right? So like, just because Ethereum moves does not mean the altcoin market has to move. It might move temporarily, but the issue is that the minute Ethereum sneezes, the altcoins basically just get back all their gains. So what I think could happen is I think we're still in the alt to ETH rotation right now. So people are still trading. We're in the does it bleed to Ethereum phase. I think we're gonna see a rotation back to Bitcoin starting late August at the latest, and I think that rotation could last through potentially October. I think it could last potentially through October, and then I think you'll see potentially another. Then you might get that rotation from Bitcoin into altcoin. So if you do get an alt season, like if there is one, and again, there is no guarantee, there's never any guarantees. I would say it probably won't start until sometime like mid Q4. And again, that doesn't mean like wait until then to figure out what you want to buy or to load up on it. It's just like a recognition of, hey, like the altcoin might go up, but there's still a good chance it's going to bleed back to Bitcoin. And this is exactly what happened in 2017. I mean, we saw an altcoin rotation out or Bitcoin to altcoins in July, and then late August we saw it go right back to Bitcoin, and then November we finally saw alts rally against Bitcoin, because I think a lot of people forget that whenever alt season happens, that's usually the end of the cycle, right? So like if whenever it does happen, like it's a good thing in the very, very short term. But if you look like 1 month out or 2 months out, the cycle is usually over at that point. So it's almost better the longer we don't have it, and people just sort of ride up the Bitcoin gains. It's after Bitcoin has peaked. So usually what happens, Bitcoin peaks, and then it gets a big drop. Everyone freaks out. And then when Bitcoin bounces to a lower high, that's when you get alt season, right? That's normally when alt season occurs. So I don't think we're there yet. I think we're in let's call it blue chip season, or Bitcoin dominance plus Ethereum dominance is going up. And I think that season could last for a few more months.
Yeah. Okay, gosh. So it's we have to continue the bleed to ETH. Then we bleed back to Bitcoin. But ETH you reckon could stay strong as well though, and the blue chips.
I think Ethereum is going to stay strong on its Bitcoin pair for the rest of this cycle. I think there'll probably be one more pullback by ETH Bitcoin that allows altcoins to go to their range lows on their Bitcoin pairs, right? Like I think, but again, I don't think we're going to see that pullback, that next higher low. I don't think we're going to see that next higher low until say like September, October timeframe.
Okay. Okay. Interesting rest of the year we've got potentially playing out for us here. Rob, so that means if Ben's hypothesis is correct there, if Ben's prediction is correct, then obviously any sort of pump on alts is going to be very short lived. That would suggest that, you know, if your altcoin pumps, you need to be pretty nimble in taking profits on that. Whether you rotate those profits back to BTC or to ETH, or whether you just keep them in stables is one thing, or, you know, I guess is up to the individual. But it just suggests that we're going to have to be really, really fast on our feet here.
Yeah, and that's what and just like, I mean, Ben pretty much said most of, you know, everything you need to know about going from Bitcoin to Ethereum to alts. The thing is that what people, I think, realize, maybe they don't, is that you've been accumulating for years and years and years, and now you're asked to sell. I think that's the hardest thing in crypto, is to say, well, I've been dollar cost averaging or lump sum or value cost averaging, and now I have to sell this stuff. How does that work? I mean, they know how it works, but it's going to be very difficult to do it. I think that's why people round trip their bags. And if it's as short as it was the two previous times, it's going to be a very small window. You're talking weeks, not months. And it'll be difficult for people to do that, because they're going to hear the same narratives: extended cycle, never go down, diamond hands. And they're going to get caught again. And that's what is unfortunately going to happen for most. And it's only very few actually can get out in the right time. But there is one thing about, you know, going from Ethereum to alts and then, you know, Bitcoin rallying, that it's going to be very tougher this time, because with Bitcoin, when you look at alts, you can say, okay, I'm going to get into alts and I can sell those because I want to, and depending on your goals, whatever it is, you sell those alts for some people and they can put it into Bitcoin. The problem is nowadays, and I look at this and I say, do I really want to sell any of my Bitcoin? Because if it really does come onto the balance sheet of the US government, and there's nation states holding it, and there's massive amount of companies and it's on the balance sheet, do I really want to go that route? So it's like when you put things into Bitcoin, it's kind of like some days I feel like it's trapped there, and you really can't, there is no cash flow. You can't get cash flow unless you take loans against it, and good luck with that, because everybody did the Voyager or the Celsius type of thing. And I think that's also another problem. So when I take a look at it, I mean, for me right now, I still buy a little bit of Bitcoin, but I'm loading up on alts a little bit more because I can sell those. And if I sell those as we rally into it in, you know, probably Q4, maybe Q1 in 2026, then I can sell those and put into the things that I really think are valuable.
Yeah. Wise words. I personally find it, well, just the idea of selling my Bitcoin is just something I can't really stomach. So yeah, alts definitely become, you know, the sort of much more disposable. And ETH as well, I guess, although, you know, it's as Ben says, like it seems to be looking pretty strong for ETH now, which is not something we would have said all that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, there's a real quick site people can track the ETH treasuries. I just found this today, Strategic ETH Reserve XYZ. And you can just see just how fast things have gone from 0 to 60 in no time. And looking back, this is the balancing. You went from nothing essentially all the way up to here. And it also lays out who the big players are: BitMine and SharpLink and Ether Machine and so on and so forth. I just thought it was interesting. You can just see just how fast we're going with Ethereum, whereas before, previous April, there was nothing really going on. I remember, I mean, people were talking about like Ethereum is a dead chain. Nothing's really going on and it hasn't really grown. Now we get treasuries and everybody's all hot to trot on it. So things can happen quite quickly. It's a good lesson.
That's a great site. I mean, yeah, Ethereum has literally been a joke for, you know, most of this year. You know, at one point you just couldn't go on Twitter without your whole feed just being sort of stabs at Ethereum. You know, and we've all done it, or I've done it especially. But and yet now, and that, I mean, that, as you say, that's it's incredible with the treasury holdings as well, and of course the ETFs, the ETH ETFs. saw way bigger inflows. I mean, not only have they been seeing consistent inflows for I think it's the past couple of weeks now, but they've been outpacing the Bitcoin ETFs, which is again something that was just inconceivable not that long ago.
Yeah, everybody, they see what's happening, and then the narrative takes hold. And what is it? Price falls narrative.
Notice how the narrative changed in April when the treasury companies came on, and that was exactly when Ethereum went home. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Saying, I mean, it's like the narrative always follows the price, not the other way around. Because had Ethereum done this exact move a year ago in the summer of 2024, the narrative would have been, oh, it's because of the ETFs, but that didn't happen, and then the ETF narrative died. So it's a great example of how the narrative follows the price, not the other way around.
Yeah. I think this 2cash666 makes a good point here. I think these ETH ETFs are FOMOs in the sense they don't want to be late to another BTC. I mean, does he mean ETFs or treasury companies, or perhaps both? But yeah, it seems like the companies sort of buying these stacking ETH treasuries or buying into the ETFs. I think there is definitely a sense. It's like, gosh, these Bitcoin things were really successful. Those Bitcoin ETFs are the fastest fastest to major milestones in history. IBIT, I think, is the fastest growing ETF ever, or something crazy. So I think there is definitely a sense of institutional FOMO driving the some of these ETH, some of these corporate entities buying ETH. It's translated. They're the same as us retail plebs, essentially.
They just have a lot more money.
For now, at any rate. Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you guys one more question. It's a bit more of a general one, this. I've noticed just a few headlines in the last few weeks and months where we seem to be starting to see more and more, I guess you could call them consumer crypto products hit the market. So, for instance, things like the Solana phone from last year or the year before, but there's a new one of those coming out. Sui has a handheld gaming device coming out soon. I think actually we're getting one of those delivered to the Coin Bureau office, so I might be able to tell you about that soon. Meanwhile, you've got things like PayPal now letting customers pay with crypto, a wide range of cryptos. The Base app, which is sort of the redesigned Coinbase wallet, is rolling out. All of these things basically sort of bringing or trying to bring crypto to the mainstream, largely to an audience that may not have discovered it yet or may not have had much experience with it. So I just wanted to ask you guys, are there any particular products like that you're using or that you're keeping an eye on and that you think might sort of be able to kind of bridge that gap between the crypto space and everyone else who's kind of heard of it and maybe is a bit suspicious? Yeah, Rob, is there any particular platform that you're interested in, or device, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I just started this 2 days ago, as a matter of fact. I went with World Mobile, and I have telephone service with them. So you can see on that, I showed an image of it. This is day 2 of it. So World Mobile, I talked to Mickey, the founder, and he's like, hey, we're going to roll this out in the States for telephone service, and you're going to be able to get it's unlimited talk, text. Data is there's a throttling. Also, you get free VPN and SIM swap protection up to $5 million, and then also you can stake your World Mobile token to pay for your monthly fee. I said, that's pretty good. So I tried that day 2. Seems to be working out pretty well, and I like that. So we'll see if it's at how it goes from there. There's and then also there's one more that I thought this is going to help me. I don't know how many people this is actually going to help. And if you can throw up the screen real quick. Let's see. Well, that's World Mobile. But this one with Indigo Protocol, and this is on. Well, first of all, World Mobile is multi-chain. They're on Cardano and BNB and a couple other ones. Indigo is mostly Cardano, and it's not just about tokenizing. I don't really. That's not the big thing, but I'm working with them and Chakra to put an AI agent for my Airbnb and Vrbo accounts, because this is something that they're already in the process of doing. So like with me, because of we own real estate in different parts of the Puerto Rico and also in Texas, we have a problem with like when the people check in, they're like, what's the Wi-Fi password? Couldn't find this. What's up with the water? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like a constant, it's like it's a pain in the ass is what it is. Yeah. So I want to do an AI agent, and they're going to create one for me. And then we're going to go from there as far as like maybe selling that off to some other opportunities. So that's the two that I'm working with right now, to get telephone service and an AI agent for our properties. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm excited about.
Nice. And of course, yeah, all of this, I mean, I guess what's interesting about things like this is that to ordinary people, to muggles, people who aren't into crypto yet, a lot of this stuff is just the crypto side of it is not necessarily visible. It's running in the background, because I always think that like people are turned off by the idea of, oh, this is a crypto app or this is a blockchain app. But if it just works and sorts their query, then that I think they're likely to be much more accepting of the fact that it's crypto. It's like you've got to show them something that works first and that kind of solves the problem, and then you can be like, well, actually, funnily enough, it does this because it runs on crypto rails or whatever. But yeah. That's
exactly right. I mean, no one wants to see it. No one wants to know how the sausage is made. So just make something that works and
absolutely
go from there.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Ben, what about you? Are there any particular apps, platforms that you're using that you think are promising, or are you sort of just observing from the sidelines? How's it working?
I'm not using any of those apps. I mostly just buy crypto for dubious speculation, as I say. And for me right now, that's basically just Bitcoin and Ethereum. And yeah, I think I feel pretty comfortable with that. I'm not like Rob, and I'm not as adventurous, I guess, with all that stuff. But yeah, I don't have anything else to add, unfortunately.
Okay. Yes, someone said I'm using the Harry Potter reference. I think has maybe triggered some people, perhaps for the best. It's because I think in terms of some of these things, I think you hear about them, and then I've lost count of the number of sort of crypto apps or whatever that I've gone and kind of checked out, and it's like, actually, this is pretty this is pretty crappy. Like it's promising to do this, and it's just like, nah, this is not going to bring on mass adoption. But I think there do seem to be more and more that are starting to show real promise. And like World Mobile, I mean, this is kind of what crypto was supposed to do, wasn't it? It was supposed to empower people who were not necessarily who were kind of locked out of traditional systems. So whether that's whether it's giving people access to finance, or whether it's giving them internet connectivity or phone connectivity or something, that I think stays very true to the sort of founding principles of crypto. Does it not?
No, it does. And then but the problem with these companies actually coming out and actually having utility is there's no speculation. People are like, oh, that's what it does. And so what are the earnings? How much are things making? And then they go from there. And it's like, well, I could get into that, which actually does something. I can see a real world use case, or I can invest in a fart coin and go up 10x. So it's those things that is the problem of us crossing that Rubicon to doing absolutely nothing and just speculation, actually doing something and having utility and moving that direction. And that's going to be the next big step.
That's that's honestly probably a big reason why I am where I am. Like it's easy to turn cynical when like you see, when you're here long enough and you see the ones that the ones that do the best often are in the altcoin market completely are even say they provide no value. Like those are the ones that often do the best in like for any individual cycle. Even if they die, a lot of those all die off, and then you just have a new sector of them or a new class the next cycle. So I think I don't know how we make that transition, but because I used to think that was what make the most sense, and then you kind of realize that markets don't care about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's brutal when the success of a project is kind of measured on its token price, isn't it? And it's like, if that token is underperforming, then the project must be a complete failure or whatever. And that's not true. I mean, I've held some World Mobile token for a year now, and I was up on it for a bit, and now I'm down. And you sort of think, oh well, what's the project done? Why is that? Is it not doing as well? And then you look into it, and it's like, and it's the same with Helium, which I don't hold.
Yeah.
But you look at and the figures are going up, the number of people using these things are going up, and you're like, well, but the token price is still in the toilet, or not really doing anything. But it's unfortunate that seems to be the measure. It's like, is the price going up? Yes. Then it must be a success, and the opposite being true. But I guess if these projects can just keep making inroads and building user bases and continuing to expand, albeit slowly, then that it's a slow burn, but for the win eventually.
Let's see who's want to be around that long.
And also, people need to remember that most of these crypto projects don't actually need tokens. They just create a token so they can dump on the retail investors that buy it.
Yeah.
If we're being honest.
Ben, we're always honest on this show. Well, I mean, Nick and I were talking about this on Monday's news show, because we were discussing what happened with the pump.fun ICO, and the fact that Pump has not performed well in the wake of that. And I was kind of the opinion, I was like, this is a protocol that was making a ton of money. Did they need a token? Really? They had revenue, which is the most important thing. And I kind of felt that one of the reasons why they lost ground to rivals, to rival meme coin launchpads, was perhaps that they'd focused too much time and energy and money on trying to get this token off the ground that wasn't really necessary. It had been shooting the lights out, beforehand. It'd be making money hand over fist, and then suddenly a token comes along, and you're like, what is this thing doing? Like, look at and again, this is an example I used with Nick, and he sort of he countered. He said, well, we're talking apples and oranges here, because one is a pump.fun is an app, and what I'm talking about here is an L1, but like or a layer 2, I should say, but like Base, the Coinbase layer 2, which has been, attracting tons of users, and I think is doing, whatever people may think of Coinbase, I think is doing a really good job of onboarding people into crypto. They do not have a token, and they've explicitly said, we are not going to have a token, and that has not stopped. That has not held them back. I think that's probably helped them a bit. Okay, you could argue that a lot of people are using Base to try and farm a future airdrop, but I mean, like Jesse Pollock and Brian Armstrong have both said, like, many times, we are not doing a token. But so you've got to imagine that people are actually using Base because it's easy to use and it's cheap.
Yeah, and it has the users, that's for sure, and it's fast and it's cheap. Just there's no token. Yeah.
So as Ben says, you don't always need one. That is the unspoken unspoken truth in a lot of cases. Okay, there were a few questions in the chat, and there were a couple that caught my eye, and I just wanted to see if I could find them again. This one from Larry. Question for Ben off the back of his recent video, please. In the video, it says retail interest isn't back. Do ETF inflows not count as retail buying?
I mean, they can. The video, the retail interest is not looking at like inflows to ETFs. It's just looking at interest on YouTube and X. That's what it's actually measuring. So it just shows that people are there. It just shows you that like people still haven't really arrived in the same way they arrived in 2021 and 2017, at least not yet. That doesn't mean they won't. It just means they're not here yet.
Yeah. Let's hope they make a return. All right, we are almost up on time there, guys. So Ben, Rob, thanks very much for joining. It's been great to see you guys. We will be, I think we're back next week. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm going to be out of town next week, so I probably not. I will have internet, so it's possible that I could do it just from out of town, but well, I'll have to let you guys know.
Okay. You can always live stream while you're driving through the countryside.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'll be traveling a little bit next week, so I'm not 100% sure yet.
Okay. Well, we'll fix something up. We'll sort something out. Maybe we take a week off, or maybe maybe Ben just does it on the hoof. We'll decide then. But guys, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for watching. We will be back at some point. So we will see you then. Thanks very much.
Thanks everybody.
Okay. And